Another thing to note is that if you place all 4 fingers on the neck, if this is a bit difficult because the frets are a bit bigger here and you find you can't quite reach 4 frets, move up a bit higher and place all 4 fingers, 1 on each fret. You'll notice that these 2 fingers, if you're keeping your hand very relaxed, very natural, are straight down, sort of 90-degree angle. They're very straight. You'll notice that the 4th finger tends to play a bit on this side. The 1st finger tends to play a bit on the opposite side, and that's fine. Because if you try to get all your fingers playing straight on, directly on the tips, it just doesn't work. Your hand just naturally doesn't do that. So your 2nd and 3rd finger will be straight on. Your 1st finger and 4th finger will be a bit on the side. As far as the thumb is concerned, it rests, again as I mentioned, behind the 1st or 2nd finger, or 1st or 2nd fret, in the middle of the neck. You'll see that the thumb tends to be just behind the 2nd fret. Okay, maybe a bit this way or a bit that way, but generally speaking, somewhere towards the 2nd fret and the middle of the neck. Careful that the thumb doesn't come up too much, or for that matter, even go down too low, but just towards 1st, 2nd fret. And it's also very important that you don't do this with the thumb. The thumb is flat. This knuckle is extended, if you want. It's very common for people to do this. And that creates a very unstable base because it's like trying to rest something on a point. It should be flat, like that. Okay? The other important thing is that people have a tendency to grab the neck, to put the whole hand, the palm of the hand, against the neck. You should almost imagine that there's another ½ an inch of neck extending so that you can't get close to the neck, that your hand is about ½ an inch or so from the neck. It's very important that you get into that habit, because otherwise the fingers become very scrunched up in that position, and it becomes very difficult to play because the fingers are like this. Or if your hand is naturally relaxed, there's this curve in it, which creates a space in here. So keep checking whenever you're playing. Make sure that you're not getting into that habit of bringing the hand in contact with the neck. The other very common problem is for the hand to be in this position rather than like this. The knuckles of the hand should be parallel to the neck, not at right angles. This is fine if you're just going to use 1 or 2 fingers, but as you can see, the 4th finger can't really even reach the string. So you have to bring your entire hand over and in contact, or not quite in contact, but that it brings the 4th finger into position so that all fingers at all times have equal access to the string. You also notice that there's a slight pulling motion. Okay? Rather than all the motion being in the hand, rather than just squeezing, you can make a bit of use of the arm so that you pull in slightly. You use this arm a bit, and that's counteracted by this arm, so that as this pulls, this arm applies a bit of pressure and holds the guitar in, so that the entire guitar is in balance. There's tension pulling this way and a slight pull this way. So the guitar should also feel quite secure. If you do everything from the hand, you'll find that your thumb becomes very sore because there's so much pressure. And again, it makes it more difficult to apply that light pressure that we talked about. So there's a slight pull with the arm, and then it's compensated for by pushing in slightly with this arm. And again, this part of the arm is hanging relaxed. Even though there is a bit of pulling motion, it's not necessary to lift at all. Simply have it hanging relaxed. Now this might sound very complicated in that there's so many things to remember, but I'm going to be stressing for the next 2 tapes. I'll be going over and over these points. As we do each exercise, I'll say, watch out for this, watch out for that. So at this point, just have an overview, have a general feeling for what I've talked about, but don't feel that you have to memorize it and have that all mastered at this point. It may seem a bit confusing, but you'll see as we go along, I'll keep mentioning it, so you don't really have to keep it all in mind at this very moment. It's also important when we're working with any of the exercises or any of the new techniques that we're introducing, that rather than having the attitude that it's very difficult, you'll find that by thinking, oh, this is quite simple, that it actually helps. Because as soon as we think, oh, this is so difficult, he's introducing so many things, and this is just going to be so hard, we tend to tense up a lot. We tend to get all geared up for it, think, oh, this is going to be very difficult, I'm going to really have to apply a lot of energy. That creates a lot of tension, which makes it more difficult to play. So from the beginning, have the attitude that it's a very simple thing to do, very easy. And in fact, it actually is. We'll begin our study of the left hand by using 3 notes. The first one you already know, which is E string open. The next note is F, which is played on the 1st fret with your 1st finger. And the 3rd note is G, which is played on the 3rd fret with the 3rd finger. Remember to play just behind the fret with the tips of your fingers. So let's look at our first exercise now. You'll notice something new. At the beginning, for the time signature, we have a C. What that is a symbol which means common time, which is the same as 4/4. So rather than 4/4, you could have a C. They're interchangeable, same thing. So this piece then is in 4/4. So let's begin. Remember also to note the right hand fingering. I am, I am. We alternate right hand fingering all the way through. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try that one. Once again, 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's important, before going on to the exercises, that you master each one. And also feel free to, when you're practicing on your own, to slow it down if you want. I'm giving you sort of a fairly slow but to medium tempo. So you might find it a bit quick at the beginning, or perhaps you might find it quite easy. In any case, as I mentioned on the previous tape, practice very slowly. Take your time. You may find it might take you a week or so in the first couple of exercises. It's better to go slowly and pay attention to as many of the details that I've mentioned. Correctly placing the left-hand fingerings, keeping in mind the right-hand fingerings, keeping in mind how you're sitting. So you'll find, again, that you'll progress much quicker if you take your time and master each study before you go on. In fact, you'll find that if you haven't done enough study on the first tape, quite soon you'll probably be running into a few problems. So you might find you might even have to backtrack now and then. Actually, that's quite a good guide. If you find you're getting into trouble and it's getting too difficult, go back, review, and then go on further.